Slightly Above Average Gamers, Way Above Average Podcast. Welcome to the Slightly Above Average Gaming Podcast with your hosts, J007TV and Sub1KD.
Welcome everybody to the Slightly Above Average Gaming Podcast. This is episode 13. We are going to be diving in a little bit more in depth into Modern Warfare 3 after we've all had, say, a week or so to play it. But also, we are joined by special guests. So first, I'm J007TV, and my co-host is Sub1KD. But we are joined by the gentleman from the CPU. I've got D Parks, Lee Pei, and the most controversial man on Twitter himself, the one and only J-Rock. How you boys doing?
Doing good, guys.
Doing well.
Thanks for having us.
Pretty good.
Excellent. Well, we really appreciate you guys hopping on. We've had a lot of good interactions with y'all on Twitter. Been able to play with actually all three of you and had just a great time. It was, like Jay says, the vibes were immaculate. So, again, happy you guys, would take the time to hop on, especially you, Jay, because I know you're on a tight schedule with them little ones, man. So I appreciate you.
Well, I appreciate you. We had a great time playing.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and get into it. Jay, why don't you tell me what is the CPU? How did it start? What made you decide to go ahead and, just get that thing going?
Oh, that's a big question. I'll try to get right to the point, keep it as brief as I can. The CPU is the Call of Duty Players Union, and it is basically a community which is supposed to be a lot of things, but at the core, it's supposed to be it sounds kind of cliche, but a safe place for Call of Duty fans to be able to gather, talk about Call of Duty games, find other people, like-minded people to play with, good people, decent people, kind of a lot different from what we see online in a lot of the other parts of the COD community. So that's kind of an all-encompassing summary, but it got its start a long time ago, as a matter of fact, with a very personal experience that I had with Warzone, and it was Warzone 1. I had a fantastic time with some, very, very old friends of mine. We'd play Warzone 1 during COVID as much as we could. We were never able to play daily, but we'd play a couple times a week, and we had a blast. And then we started having a bit different experience as Verdansk wore on and getting on toward the Cold War version. And then, of course, into Caldera, it just for us got really difficult to play. And we got, fewer kills. We had a lot of friends drop off and things like that. And I started really kind of, over the many years I've played Call of Duty, since 2007, I've played every Call of Duty. I've talked to an awful lot of players like me because there are people in my lobbies and, casual players, my skill level. Of all the people on this podcast, I'm by far the least skilled player. I'll admit, Jay shaking his head. You're very kind, man. I appreciate that. And I've kind of, as our experience, mine and my friends' experience wore on with Warzone, and I started to lose friends to the game, I just really started kind of associating with what I considered at the time the plight of the casual player. And so I thought, I want to create something somewhere, a place online where people like me, people like my friends who experienced what they did, can kind of gather and be together amongst themselves. Because around probably, I'd say, end of August, I think September 2020, I got my first solo win in Warzone, and it was fantastic for me. And at that point in time, I kind of started thinking, hey, I may be good enough to start having some impact in the community. I was wrong. Based on my skill level, I was nowhere near the kind of player you need to be to have a skill-based impact in the community. So I kept thinking to myself, what else can I do? And so eventually I came up with the idea of this community. And the goals were many, from, having enough people in it to influence Activision to put in a decent anti-cheat. Because, as we all know, Warzone 1 was riddled with cheaters. We didn't experience too many in my lobbies, but a lot of other people did. I had, for a longest time, I was thinking, the skill gap, I think it needs to be lower than it was in Warzone 1. That was one thing. And then behind everything was just always this sense of community. Because when I was online, after that win, and I started dabbling in YouTube, I started dabbling on Twitter, I started getting involved online, I just, I found a lot of negativity. I found a lot of toxicity, and I didn't expect it. I could deal with it because I was in my 40s, but this next generation coming up, their youth benefits them in the game, but it doesn't do anything for them when they get online into the Call of Duty community on Twitter. So that's basically the origins and the reason the Call of Duty Players Union exists. So that's the long version, but there you go.
No, that's great, and that's pretty consistent with what I've seen you say on Twitter. I wanted to hear it actually. Instead of seeing it in print or in a font or whatever, I wanted to actually hear it from you, and I think that's that's a noble cause, because you are right. Like, the Call of Duty community, I don't want to paint with a whole brush, with a big broad brush, because there are some toxic parts to it, but then there are also some good parts to it too.
Absolutely.
And I think that comes with any game or any kind of online community, if you really think about it. So, that takes me to, we'll go Lee Pei and then D Parks. What made you guys? Well, first of all, how did you hook up with the CPU, and then what made you want to join and take leadership roles in it? Because there's no three people with the CPU that are more visible than you three. So, take it away, Lee.
So I joined way after D. I assume way after D, but basically started this year. I was just on Twitter checking out content for Warzone 2, and it was a lot of people just like I saw so many people that were just thinking that every streamer, everyone who's better than them essentially was hacking. And I would interact with those posts, and some people got very nasty when I suggested that maybe it wasn't hacking, but there's other things at play. There's connection speeds, there's skill, and people just couldn't really accept that. And there was just a constant in my replies, not specifically my replies, but in those conversations, and that was Jay. And I would always see him mentioning D Parks. And through talking on Twitter every once in a while, we just started saying, we should get some games together sometime. And we played once and we added each other. But basically every day that I would get on and see, especially D Parks on, because he plays a little bit more than J-Rock.
A lot more.
Yeah, he was always at a full party, which honestly is I was so jealous of that, because I lost all of my Warzone 1 friends. Nobody came back. And I would get on every night, try and find someone that I played with 4 months prior to try and get something going. And D Park somehow every single night had a full party. And then I jokingly said maybe one of these nights I'll find you with a spot open. And I think Jay may have said something like, you should join the CPU. We always play together. So from there, I joined, and the conversations, the vibes are good, much better than Twitter or X or whatever you call it. And I just never turned back. One day, I was active enough, and one day I was like, what is this new tab on the Discord? And I had been added to the admins list without my knowledge.
No, and he didn't get a choice. No
choice. So that's how that happened. And then I just see the way J-Rock is treated by some people. I am very vocal about my disagreements with J-Rock. I'm not a yes man. I don't agree with what he says. But I am definitely against the way that he's treated online. So you see me pushing back on that a lot, just as much as I push back on some of the things he says that I don't agree with.
Mm-hmm.
D?
Mine actually started a little before J-Rock. I would see people posting on Twitter their gameplay at about my skill level, and they were still getting roasted on Twitter and every other social media platform, and it just kind of set wrong with me. And then I started seeing J-Rock pop up on my Twitter, and he started getting roasted the same way. And then a little while after that, I started interacting with him, and come to find out he was about a decent community, and I joined from there. And come to find out, I was one of the first few people to join, so the relationship just blossomed from there. I was all about the community aspect of it.
Well, it seems like you guys have a pretty good community. I mean, listen, no community is perfect. Not any of the ones I'm a part of are, and but you guys are, the three of you, like I said, are the face of the CPU, is what it seems like to me from the outside looking in, right? And the vibes are always good. And Lipe, I'm going to go ahead and say I agree with you on the way I see. It seems like it's not as bad lately, but like before, just the way people would interact with Jay. And I just came to the conclusion of, like, even though I disagree vehemently on a few things.
You had to add that word, Jay, didn't you?
Yeah, well, listen, he's still entitled to his opinion. Like, who am I to say, to start name calling and get nasty and take it personal? Like, that shit is not okay to me. So that's where I agree with you. I agree with the three of you, and I appreciate the approach you've had. Sub, I mean, what do we've all actually met on Twitter, believe it or not. All five met on Twitter.
Yep.
I came across you three with the CPU and Sub one, and we all have the same thing in common besides being on the same platform. We like and love Call of Duty, right?
I initially met Sub before all this, before Twitter, on a different Discord.
Yeah, you were on. We were on. What's it called?
Just Okay Warzone.
Just Okay Warzone. Yeah. So another group of casual Warzone players.
I've heard of that.
And another great group of people. Used to be big on custom games for people of average and below skill level, which
cool.
which was a lot of fun. It's been kind of a little bit more of just a social group lately, because getting 50 people together on a random weekday to play the game is a bit more challenging. So it brings an interesting question though that I've been wondering, and I've been trying to pin down. So this is coming from the point of like I don't have a good answer for this. I have lots of different answers, and none of them work together. What is, to you guys, a casual player? Because when I think about it, I think of a casual player. I usually equate casual with below average skill. All right? You don't play the game very often. You have below average skill. But then I have people that I run into that get mad at me when I call them a casual, or when I say that they're not casual based on their skill. And they tell me I only play 3 hours a week. I'm just, God's gift to the game. And I don't know what to say to that, because they don't play very often, but they're very good. They're much better than I am. And then I know people that sink literally hundreds of hours into the game, so they're not casual in the terms of their playtime, but they're worse than I am, right? So, I have had, and Jay, a while ago, you'd asked me if I'd join the CPU. I politely declined, and we talked about it a little bit, and you asked me, what am I here for? And, part of my off-the-cuff answer was I wanted to be a voice for the casuals on Twitter, much like, you were doing. And you asked me, basically, if I remember right, something along the lines of like, what does that mean? And I had to think about that for a bit, and I ended up with the fact that I actually have no idea what a casual player is. So, what do you, in your mind, like, what is a casual player? Because, I know you guys like to advocate for it, but, there's a huge spread of skill right here on the screen, and huge amount of time played, right? And I think a lot of us talk about being casual in a lot of ways, even though, by a lot of definitions we are or we're not, right? So, I mean, Lipe, do you have, what do you think about a casual? Like, what is a casual mean?
To me, I see the whole casual and hardcore not so much as a skill level, but a dedication to the game. I honestly don't even think that someone who plays 3 hours a week is a casual. If you think about that in the grand scheme of things, like if you spend 3 hours each week playing softball, you're not a casual softball player. You're playing 3 hours a week. You're playing a game per week. That's a significant amount of your time. But I think you can play 3 hours a week of anything and be bad at it, or you can play 3 hours a week of anything and be really good at it. I haven't played as much as I want to recently, but I'm not terrible at the game. I'm not like a huge sweater or anything like that. But it's like I don't think about it so much in terms of skill, because you can put 1,000 hours into something, and if you didn't actually think about what you were doing and try and improve your skills, you can just be at the same level as you were when you started. So to me, it's just more about how you think about the game and the commitment and how much it takes up your free time. Because you can have a job where you have no free time and all of your free time is Call of Duty. It's not that much time, but it's still an important thing to you, and you're not really a casual at that point.
Makes sense. It's a good answer. D, what about you? When you think of casual, where does your head go on that?
I agree and disagree with Lipe. I think a casual is somebody who just doesn't play a lot. They might come home 30 minutes a night, have a game or two in, and shut it off after that. They don't pay attention to Twitter. They don't pay attention to all the internet BS. They just like to play the game for a couple hours. As far as that's about all I have.
I think Jay's had to turn the cam off for a minute, but J Rock, what about you? Like when you advocate for the casual, define that player for us.
Yeah. Okay. Well, to give you 10 seconds of background before I give you a 50-second answer, maybe more. So when I was going through the whole pre-design phase for what the CPU was going to be, part of what I had to do was a ton of research and thinking about what the different kinds of players were and who am I really trying to help the most, who am I trying to attract, why am I trying to do that, and why do they need help, and all that stuff, everything, all of it. And my answers back then were a little different than they are now. And things have changed. I've changed my mind. I've learned. I've grown. But overall, I've made a video on this too. I think there are 3 different types of players to games in general: casuals, hardcores, and then in the middle there's this group of rapidly growing, in my opinion, called midcore that I call them midcore players. And to address your question about the casuals, I think it's, like Lipe said, basically a mindset. You're a casual player if your mindset is, I just want to hop on, regardless of how much time I spend in the game, I just want to hop on and play. I'm not really considering a whole lot, what did I just do wrong there to lose that fight? What am I going to have to do next time to win that fight? They're not thinking about it a whole lot. They're just trying to play and enjoy the game. And that's the short version, but at the bottom line, that's what I believe a casual player is.
Great. That's a solid answer. Jay, I'm going to put you on the hot spot too. I know you weren't on the list of people to face the question, but when you talk about a casual, fire away.
So it's to me, it's a little mixture of both, and it is a mindset thing, right? I've been told I'm a casual player, and my answer back was 1,000 games of Warzone. There's nothing casual about that. Casually means you just do it once in a while or a small amount of time. I'm putting in hundreds of hours in this game a month. I'm not a casual. And, and I actually took offense to that because when Modern Warfare 2 came out, they basically geared that game towards the casual. And I didn't want any part of that. I didn't ask for any of that stuff. I was happy with it the way it was. I personally didn't want to be associated with it. So I always just feel like there's 3, maybe not mid-core, but there's your CDL players, there's your casuals, and then there's your hardcore players right in the middle. And then, maybe there's little subgroups like Jay said, but, I have friends who think that basically anybody who's not CDL or comp is a casual, and that's just inherently wrong in my opinion.
Yeah, it's fair. It's funny because I see this thrown around on Twitter a lot of casuals are, they don't, it's like a money spend almost, right? Like the casuals don't buy the Vault Edition. The casuals they don't buy the skins, right? They just hop on to play and they hop off. And I'm surprised that didn't come up, because I don't think that's a great answer either. I have buddies that'll hop on. They only hop on for a week every 6 weeks or so, but they just buy whatever bundle is hot, has the meta gun in it, and they run that for the week. And so I think I think the question of what is a casual, I think Lipe is probably probably nailed it as close as I've heard. Is that it's the mindset. It's how much dedication you're putting to the game. I think that's an answer that satisfies a lot. But I think too that's going to be something we're going to throw out into Twitter, and I'm sure we'll be roasted for how dare you accuse me of being a casual just because I don't sit on Twitter all day. I love this game. I'm not a casual.
Well, one of the things, Sub, that drives me nuts is that there's a lot of people out there in the COD community that throw that term casual at people as an insult.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's definitely become like a slur.
And it drives me nuts because Call of Duty, in my opinion, has always been made mostly for a casual, the mass audience. And most gamers worldwide, approximately 66%, according to my research on Google, are classified as casual gamers. So that's the majority of COD players too. And so it's kind of like you're using who are the lifeblood of Call of Duty and every other game basically, except for some select, like Valorant. I don't know how much casual audience that game has, but Call of Duty, huge casual audience, and you're using those people as an insult to other people. It just doesn't make any sense to me. So that's one thing about this whole casual conversation that I kind of wanted to get out there. I don't view it as an insult. If I get called a casual player, I'm like, yeah, okay. Like, yeah, I don't. I'm definitely not a hardcore player. So,
and one thing about the money spend thing, I think that if there's one thing that casuals will do, and I've noticed this with my friends who don't really play much, they'll hop on to join because of haunting is happening, and they'll see a skin for a character they like, and they'll buy it, and they'll use it for that month, and they won't play again. I think skins more than weapon blueprints is something that a casual will get, because I don't play Fortnite much. But occasionally I will. I have some friends who like it, and I'll get on and be like, "Oh crap, Goku's on there. I gotta buy that."
Marshmallow, baby.
Yeah.
Fair.
Are you a casual Fortnite player, Lipe?
I'm below casual. Like the amount of times I've played it, I can't even say that.
I actually kind of feel like my friends are, I guess, kind of the opposite of that, though, because they're considered, quote, casuals, but them MFs won't spend any money on the game. So it's like you have some that will and some that won't.
Yeah,
I think it's really individual. Hard to know. Because I legitimately have friends who they won't spend any damn money on the game, unless they already had their 1,000 tokens for the battle pass. And then any kind of drip they get is from that battle pass. They're not spending any extra money on the game. So, I think it could be either way, really.
Yeah. I think that's the thing with labels like this, is that, there's so much gray area that you're never going to nail it down. Because at the end of the day, it's how the person feels about their dedication to it. More than how you feel somebody's dedicated, it's an internal thing. So someone who doesn't buy any skins might still care enough about the game itself to not really feel like a casual. And at the end of the day, it's not really... I feel like there's not really anywhere in that terminology that actually will affect anything for anyone other than maybe Activision and their sales strategies. So it's tough to try and label other people. I feel like it's something that you kind of label yourself.
Yeah, the labels I don't think are necessary, to be honest. And that's one of the things we try to accomplish with the CPU. If you're in that Discord, you're one of us. Bottom line, period. No disrespecting of each other members. Doesn't matter if you are a super hardcore, high-skill player or you're you're me. We all respect each other for being people, as opposed to, well, are you a casual? Are you a hardcore player? Are you, did you just retire from the CDL? Whatever. I mean, that's one of the things we wanted to do, is help start changing that view.
Well, and I wanted to bring that up actually too, because we've seen it thrown around that the CPU is full of bots, and I can already tell you, first of all, Jay, you're not a bot, dude. I've played with you, so stop that. Lipe, you and D Parks are both beasts, and I mean, let us not forget Drade and Shep. Y'all have a wide mix of skill levels inside the CPU. It's not just bot people. So that's why I always kind of giggle anymore when I see that, because I know what you have in there. I've played with several of you actually.
Yeah. So,
there's a wide range, and it's not. I think it gets misconstrued. Jay telling COD Twitter, which is generally not casual, that there's a whole other group of people that need to be accounted for in these conversations. A lot of people see that as, oh, he's talking about his group. And that's not the case at all. Like, there's people in that group in all ranges of skill, and no one in there is trashing each other other than as jokes. Like, we make fun of each other all the time. But it's positive, and like the other day when we were playing, were you in the game, J007, or when Drade was just in the Discord, like the voice of God, just calling things out for us? Yeah, that was like a cool little coaching thing. I was nerve-wracking to have someone of his skill just like watching your every move. But it was fun.
Well, see, it's funny because I actually didn't mind that. It's an attitude thing for me. If you're better than me, I don't mind hearing from you. But if you're not better than me, zip it. Let me focus on what I'm trying to do. And I know that's probably a douchey thing, but like I had no problem with him telling me, because it's like that's how I learn and process, is by listening and associating with people that are better at things than me.
Yeah.
Trying to think like they think.
Yeah.
So many times when we're playing, I'll be like, I'll die and I'll keep talking. It's like, what the fuck am I doing? let them play the game. It's just got to beat that out of me.
I try to mute also. I try to as well.
Well, Lipe, honestly, speaking of playing the game, I know that I've put some hours in.
Sorry.
J007, you've been off for a week, but I know you logged some hours. I know you gentlemen have, I believe, logged some hours. Jay, why don't you start us off on getting some thoughts through on Modern Warfare 3?
So, J-Rock, what you got to play a little bit. You've probably played the least out of the five of us, but probably. I feel like you're pretty in tune with. You can still get what the feel of the game is, and be able to process after a few matches, kind of your initial thoughts of the game. So, initially, what's your initial thought of the game?
Initial thought of the game is that it's fantastic. A couple main points. Number one, even for me playing with D and Lipe, and these guys I've gotten to play with, it's felt really, really sweaty, but that is what it is. Beyond that, I really like the movement. It's on point. It doesn't feel like anything is OP to me. It feels smooth. And for me, for my goals that I'm trying to accomplish out there, if it can feel smooth and like doable, manageable to pull off maneuvers and things for me, that's a great sign for the majority of the player base. And I think the way they've done it leaves a lot of room for much more high-skilled players to utilize it better than Modern Warfare 2. And I think what's going to happen, I hope what's going to happen, is that when they make the next version of Warzone, when they make those updates with what this game has for movement, and by the way, the gunplay is fantastic too. It feels really good. Guns feel good. I think it's going to increase just the overall fun factor of Warzone exponentially. I'm pumped. I'm super excited. So yeah, I really like it.
So Jay, let me ask you this. So you mentioned Modern Warfare 2. So after having played Modern Warfare 3 and as much hours in Modern Warfare 2 that you played, can you now see a difference though in what, at least in part, what people were saying about things being choppy and clunky and just the fluidity of it?
Yeah, absolutely. So my issue with I am probably a high casual skill level, which would equate to like an average skill player, maybe a little bit below average. When I'm hanging in D or Lipe's lobbies, definitely below average compared to those people. When I jump in as a solo in any Warzone, whatever, I tend to do pretty well. So it just depends on who I'm playing with. And I hate playing solo, so it doesn't happen that often. But Modern Warfare 2 and Warzone 2, I don't love the movement. Never did. The value I think that those games bring to the whole overall Call of Duty like scheme is kind of a reset from Warzone 1, which I personally think was a little bit sweat heavy, to be honest. And when I played with Lucky and we talked about this, he agreed. That's what he said too. I think it's kind of people are willing to admit that, I think, in general. And when the pendulum swung though with Warzone 2, it swung too far. Now I've seen that. I see that, and I think everybody else obviously thought that too. But the pendulum now it's swung back to a more balanced spot, and I don't know if that would have happened if we didn't have a year of what we had. So I think it has value there, whether you like the game or not. Personally, I think that's the main value of those games, and I like this movement much better personally, and I think that's going to be the case for a very sizable, probably the majority of the player base. The ultra casuals might have a little more trouble in this game. They probably liked Modern Warfare 2 and Warzone 2 better from that regard, but I think if they keep at it, they're going to be able to adapt. And honestly, it seems like the matchmaking is very, very strong, and hopefully it'll keep them where they need to be. So that's what I'm hoping.
D?
I love the gunplay. I don't have really any gripes about it. There's a few clunky things in the movement, like the attack sprint, but if you don't spam slide cancel, you're fine with it, you know?
Sure.
My only problem's been pulling off of gunfights just a tad too early. I'm losing so many gunfights that way, but I think that's just my personal. My brain's trained on a certain millisecond, and then I'm pulling off. And
I just had that happen today. It blew a 3-kill in one mag gold challenge. I was so close, and I pulled off the guy and went to get to the next guy and got shot in the butt into the kill cam. He's just sitting there like, he dives, and I shoot him, and I rotate, and there's like a second of him like, you just stopped shooting. And then he shoots me, and I'm like, I stopped shooting. Shit.
I think I died 3 or 4 times last night to that single thing. I don't know why. It's just a learning process, I think.
I did too.
It was like 3 years of having that TCK drilled into us. Yeah,
exactly.
Lee, let me ask you this. So, since you're the solo mouse and key player here out of the 5 of us, right? You know, aim assist has always been a hot topic of discussion. So, if you would you address your thoughts on aim assist along with your just overall thoughts on the game after having played it?
So here's the thing. I have never lost a gunfight and then started bitching and moaning, oh, he must be on controller. Every time, especially in Modern Warfare 2, Warzone 2, that I'm losing tracking and lose a gunfight that way, it's because I literally cannot see through the weapon sway and like the visual recoil. So I think that just the fact that that's mostly gone already gives mouse and key a chance. I think at the CDL level, controller is the way to go. But in the middle here, I don't think the mouse and key is like at a huge disadvantage where you're gonna have a hard time. I think even if I'm hearing that
it's not.
It's not.
But even if it was, to be honest, like all I wanted is to be able to see, and they gave me that. So that's already a blessing for me. But yeah, in terms of the game itself, I think the biggest problem with it right now is the progression system. And I'm not even saying like, oh, you have to do the challenges and then you have to wait a day, because people are putting that out there, I'm sure, just to get clicks because they know that's not the truth. Because if you just keep winning matches after, then you keep getting those points. But what that encourages, even though I like that they're somehow encouraging you to win matches, because a lot of times in multiplayer it just becomes level your guns mode where no one gives a shit about the actual objectives. Encouraging that kind of has had a secondary result of a lot of bush camping and just being rats in the game. And last night I literally rage quit for the first time in a while. I was like, I can't do this. I was just getting sniped from people in bushes across the map, and I was like, I'll see you tomorrow.
That's why we don't play Quarry.
That map's fucking terrible. I'm sorry. Listen, it's that and Estate are the 2 worst maps on this game.
Yeah, it was
in my own opinion.
That I left.
Is it the map or is it how people play it?
Well, I think it is. So I don't know if you saw my tweet, earlier this week, but to me, the biggest problem I have with the game, is the way people play it. People play so fucking ratty now and stack up. Like, the stacking has just been, it's been weird. Like, I'm talking running into 4 stacks a lot.
In one room, yep.
Yeah. And
Skill
then,
issue.
Yeah, I bet. Well, then think about, like, estate, right? So, you know, you have the house, and then you have, like, the boathouse that's out off to the right side. Well, there's that whole area right here. We played a match probably after the first couple days. There was a team that just literally sat in that area the entire match and didn't leave. It was hell to get them out of there.
Yeah.
So, needless to say, I'm building a noob tube class when we're done here. That's how I'm going to start dealing with that shit.
It's happening a lot in Kill Confirmed, where a team will just be together in a small area, because then every time they get killed, somebody else just picks up their tags, which, you know, is a strategy. But
that's the way you win the game.
Yeah, and it just takes forever to find them sometimes. Like, you spend the first 2 minutes, like, where the hell are these people? It just kind of kills the vibes, but, you know, people do what they do.
So this is something that I've complained about extensively. If anybody plays with any of my IRLs, they'll tell you I complain about this nonstop. But I don't understand the obsession with raising the health and raising the TTK, because it creates this issue, in my opinion. And I think, you know, if you go back and you look at Warzone 1, right, they raised the health, they added Serpentine, and then if you go into Twitter and you look up stacking and you Google that, put your NSF filter on, but look up stacking, and you'll see, you'll see just like the complaints start to roll in. I can't believe these stackers, they're stacking, right? And then Warzone 2 rolls around, and again, they raise the health, they raise the TTK, and you get into the stacking arguments again. You hear they're stacking. Same thing when they did it in Rebirth Island. You saw the same thing. Now in multiplayer, they've raised the TTK, they've raised the health over the year prior, and everybody's, they're teaming, they're stacking, they're holding each other's, insert phallic or organ name here, and I think that the reason people do it is that it is a skill issue, right? Like, when you can kill somebody very quickly, you can move freely, you can engage multiple targets, because if you get the drop on them, if you outplay them, you win. First shot wins, right? And that gives a lot of freedom. I don't have to be really good at the game if I see you first, right? But if I know that you have time to turn on me and gun me down, I have no incentive to be alone, right? To lone wolf, except for me, because I'm nuts and I just don't like playing with other people. And so you play with your teammates, you run stacked, you run 3-4 together, the buddy system, whatever it is, and the lone wolves like me get devoured, because and I think personally it's a lower skill issue. If the ones that do stack, when you catch them one-on-one, they're terrible usually. In my experience, they're terrible. But when there's 2 of them and it takes so long to kill one person, you end up losing the fight, because you just physically cannot kill them both in the right amount of time, in enough time, which you could get away with a lot in the previous year, right, in Modern Warfare 2 and in 2019, which were very fast TTKs by comparison. Mm-hmm. So I think, I think the stacking and the higher health really, and the camping, like it becomes a skill issue. Like it is a skill issue, where the lower skilled players, they bond together and they run as a pack, because the pack is stronger than the individual in most cases, right? Unless you're Joe Woe, in which case nobody can stop that guy half the time. Yeah. So, to me, I think actually the higher TTK is a bad thing. But I want to hear from you guys, like, when we talk about raising the skill gap, right? Like this, the higher TTK was a skill gap thing. Like, it's supposed to raise the skill gap. I think it lowers it. What do you guys think? What is the skill gap for you? And what is, how does this affect the skill gap?
I think my favorite mode back in the original Warzone was actually Iron Trials, because
I love Iron Trials.
I suddenly felt like I could do something about being shot at. I could duck behind cover, figure something out, like jump out and actually have a say in how the fight went.
Mm-hmm.
I think what you're saying is valid. That could encourage that, but it could also do the opposite, where like if the TTK is so low that if you're running around and somebody spots you, you're just dead. You could feel like that's an unfair fight, that you never had a chance. So it's a little bit of RNG of like who saw each other first, who happened to look in that direction first, as opposed to who hit the most shots.
Right.
So that's why I like having a slightly higher TTK, even though just last night I did the same thing. We're like, oh, that fight's over. I'm going to turn around. Nice try, kid. And then he just shot me because I hadn't actually finished him. It's so I think there's an adjustment, but I think there's an argument for both sides where like lower TTK, from what you described, could encourage someone to run out, but I think that it could also encourage someone to stay hidden because they don't want to get shot, especially in Warzone where it's like a big map and somebody can be shooting you from a distance as opposed to multiplayer.
I totally agree with Lipe. I like where the TTK is at right now. It'll take my brain a little bit of time to get used to it, but there's outplayability.
Don't forget the plates. Plates are coming in.
Yeah, I tried all day long the other day to play it up in multiplayer. I would stop behind some. I don't know. But there's outplayability. The movement's there. But if you're caught out in the open, you're still going to die. I mean, it's quick enough for that. So I think it's the perfect spot.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm probably not the. You're not the only one who's been looking for plates in the middle of multiplayer, on where the heck all the loot is. But it is what it is. J Rock, so I know you talk about skill gap a lot. Walk us through what goes through your mind when you hear people talk about skill gap. What a skill gap is. Not your podcast, but the in-game skill gap. And walk us through what goes through your mind and what elements make up a good skill gap.
Yeah, I mean it's a fantastic question, and in my opinion, it's a huge answer because the skill gap of any multiplayer game, in my opinion, encompasses a lot of things. Virtually anything they change can increase or decrease the skill gap of a game. It's just how much is it going to affect it. And in my opinion, time to kill can obviously affect it. The movement options, speed of the game can obviously affect it, things like that. So yeah, absolutely, I agree with all that. But to me, and it's interesting because when I'm on Twitter talking to people about skill, I only have half the conversations that I have on Twitter publicly. You guys nobody ever sees half the conversations I have on Twitter because a lot of it's done in DM, which is crazy. I spend a ton of time on I need help, to be honest, but
that's why we're all here.
It's getting to be a lot. It's going to be a lot. It takes a lot of time, and that's great. It's a good problem to have, right? Because I'm trying to accomplish a good thing here in the community. But a lot of those conversations, people are saying like, "What is it with the skill gap? Why do you say this or why do you say that? Can you explain what your thoughts are to me?" And some of it's a really positive, conversation without the negativity. And one of the things that they say is, well, how come you don't have a problem with the skill gap going up from Modern Warfare 2 to 3? Because it's going up, and I admit that it's going up. So why don't you have a problem with that? Because you love Modern Warfare 2. First of all, I correct him to say I don't love Modern Warfare 2 any more than I just think it was a good direction overall. But whatever, it's a different story. For the skill gap, I think that Modern Warfare 3 is in a good spot because it's a lower skill gap than Warzone 1, than Modern Warfare 19, but higher than Modern Warfare 2. And the main part of that is the combination of slide canceling, resetting tac sprint, combined with bunny hopping stims, that whole sequence that we saw guys like Joe Woe do to just decimate teams of guys like me on a regular basis. We saw that TikTok and Facebook YouTube and Twitch. I mean, it happened all the time to a lot of people, and it didn't happen to some people too. But it happened enough where I believe it made an impact on the player base. So the skill gap, to me, the biggest thing that can affect the skill gap in a game like Warzone or Modern Warfare is quite simply, like, what buttons do you have to push in combination and sequence in the right order, in the right timing, and hitting your shots, and doing everything else you need to do at the same time, that takes the most skill of anything else. That's, to me, so when we don't have that, the skill gap is lower. And in Modern Warfare 3, we don't have that. So, yeah, the game is faster. There's more movement options. You can slide cancel. It just doesn't take, you don't have to push a bunch of buttons in sequence in the right exact order while coming up aiming on your hit. It's not going to create that same effect in the middle of a combat situation. Like, I show this clip, to me it's infamous, this clip from Joe Woe, and he's in the old downtown bank from Warzone 1. I show this clip in a lot of my videos, absolutely destroying this poor team of 4 people that had no clue what was going on. And it's funny to some people, but I related to that.
He was playing with his food, man.
And I use that clip all the time. Yeah, I use that clip all the time to demonstrate, not just, obviously he's an extremely high skill player. I love Joe. I mean, we get along really well. But it's just, to me, that doesn't happen like that anymore because the skill gap is that much smaller. So I don't know if that answers your question the way you wanted it, but that's my thoughts.
Yeah. No, I think it's a great answer. So my soapbox that I've been on, Jay's heard me on my soapbox repeatedly, is that there's, there, a game like Warzone, particularly Warzone, right? Like, multiplayer is a lot more knowledge, like map knowledge combined with, angles and your shots and that moving in the instant. But, Warzone in particular has, in my opinion, a couple of different skill gaps. And so there's the physical skill gap, the ability to slide cancel, to bunny hop, to hit your shots, and know when to do all of those things in sequence and have the reaction time to do it properly. I think that, that's the one that we see. But, I think it also has usually a cerebral skill gap where positioning, map knowledge, understanding how to rotate properly and what the right rotation is, and in my opinion, actually being able to have the right weapon for you in the situation that you're going to be in, right? So, one of the reasons I still more in the loss of tuning, but I think that we saw Warzone 1 start out with a much lower physical skill gap. Early Warzone, we didn't have slide canceling, as like a combat mechanic. It was just to get from point A to point B faster. And fights were kept at a longer distance, and then it sped up and sped up and sped up and sped up until you get to the Joe Woe clips, right, where he's dancing around everybody with the OTS-9 or whatever. The taped grip meta. We all remember that. And so I think that became the dominant skill gap. There wasn't really like that. Nothing else could fight against that skill gap, right? You could have the right position or the right placement, and somebody caught out in the open could just outmaneuver the other player at a mechanical level, right? Which you should definitely be able to do that in certain scenarios. But there's this one clip on Caldera. There's a guy in some palm trees and another guy in a window shooting at him. And he uses, he just starts juking back and forth and uses a lot of the movement. Combat Scout highlights the guy, and he actually kills the guy. He kills the guy up in a building, looking down at him through, shooting him through the walls because of Combat Scout. I think, that was a big one on Twitter for a minute. And I think that, that sort of play to me was what infuriated me the most about Warzone 1, is that guy had no business winning the fight, right? But he used mechanics that weren't intended, and then combined them with mechanics that were intended, that were dumb mechanics. Combat Scout and Serpent. And it just skewed the game in one way, that it wasn't fun to play it any other way but that, right? You had to learn that method, and there was nothing else to it, in my opinion, of the game other than that. Warzone 2 swung it radically the other direction, where you suddenly had, you could have all the Joe Woe skills in the world, and it didn't matter because you couldn't use any of them because the game just physically said, nope, not today, you cannot do that. And it got to the point that, anybody who's listened to our podcast, previous episodes, heard me rant about the fact that you just get stopped and the ability to not do what you should be able to do because the game
You couldn't
says
go in
no.
Windows, could you?
God,
Poking the
Windows.
bear there, Jay.
They're worse.
I recall.
They're somehow worse right now.
Really?
wait,
Oh no.
The plate
So did
canceling
you-
and the
what is
ammo
your
cancel.
setting? What is your ground
Yeah.
mantling setting on? Because I watched an Iceman Isaac video and he told me to turn that off, and I could not jump through windows. And I turned it back on, and I would just glide through windows like they're not even there.
Yeah, I have
I'll
no
have
problem.
to check. I might have it off. So that could be a setting issue. But so the movement, the mechanics of the game across the board were slowed down. Which, when the game came out, it had a vision, and it had, like, Warzone 2 had an idea of what it wanted to do. It wanted to be more of a traditional, slower BR with a lot of extraction ideas built in. And I thought it was fun for what it was if you stopped pretending it was Warzone 1 and you took it as a new game. But, of course, this is a COD community we're talking about, and nothing is acceptable no matter what you do. So the pendulum swung way too far, right? It was very position based, very cerebral, very take your RPK, sit in a window, and you're gonna do very well. And so I'm watching it swing kind of back and forth, and I'm happy where it is right now, to be honest. I think it respects both. I know Jay's itching to chime in.
Well, something that no one brought up, that none of you brought up, is that if you think about this, in Warzone 1, there was one glaring thing that made a huge difference in the skill gap. And that was the fact that console players were stuck at fucking 80 FOV. Meanwhile, somebody's on a $2,000 PC being able to ice skate around. That made a huge difference, and we've talked about this before. The FOV, not having FOV was a huge, huge disadvantage. I mean,
It's
you were
massive.
automatically, and they wouldn't even let you turn off cross-plat. That was the bitch thing about it that bugged me more than anything. So I got to be honest with you. I never had any intention on getting on PC gaming, but as soon as I realized that Activision was not going to let me have FOV for Warzone 1, I said, screw this. I sold one of my guns, I bought me a PC, and I ain't never going back. So
And to make things worse, back then, a $2,000 PC would be barely comparable to a console, because everything costs like a good PC cost like $5,000 back then. With
Yeah.
the supply
Yeah.
chain.
yeah,
You know
so
what's another?
that
You know
was
what's
an
another
issue.
thing? I just thought of this too with the skill gap thing, and I know you guys probably need to move on, but I just wanted to mention it that I think a really big contributor to how the skill gap works for different people. The ability to watch your minimap during a fight. There are a lot of people who don't look at it. They're not looking at their minimap. And by and large, they're casual players. I have the vast majority of people. I started Warzone this way. It was a glance every now and then when I had time. Like being able to do that while you're doing everything else, while you're tracking somebody on your screen, trying to shoot them, and taking a glance at the minimap to see, like Rebirth Island. One of the biggest, skill gaps that emerged with Rebirth Island was the good players could track their minimap and watch when they killed somebody, their teammates all appeared as a red dot. There was so many people that even by the end of Rebirth weren't doing that regularly. I played with a lot of them. So
We when we play a lot of Resurgence, and I would watch a teammate kill someone and be like, okay, where are they? Like, oh, I don't know, I didn't see anyone. It's like, did you look at the mini maps? No.
Most of them.
Well, so here's something I will tell you on this topic, and I think this is a PC versus console thing primarily, because I play on console exclusively. I have two consoles. I have one here out my shop on a monitor, and then I have the one in the living room on the TV, right? So I am the 65-inch TV dad on the couch destroying people and making them mad. Sometimes. Otherwise, I'm mad. Take your pick. It is really difficult on a big TV to watch your minimap. And I don't think people that aren't switching back and forth realize that. Because the amount of distance your focus has to travel from the gunfight in front of you up to the minimap is a lot more than it does on a monitor. So I got a 27-inch monitor here. I can, staring straight at this monitor, I can't stare at the monitor with all of you people on it because it's vertical and it doesn't work out. But if I'm staring at the monitor, I can see the minimap. I don't have to look at it. Like I can see where it is. So if red dots pop up, I know to look. On the TV, it's out of my focus. It's up out of my central point of view. So I have to physically force myself to look at it. And honestly, I think that's one of the reasons why people don't use the mini map if they're on console and they're not like, they're more of the casual console players.
You are 100% accurate.
Normal.
That's what I told D when he was thinking about getting a PC. I was like, I swear, like, you're already good. You're going to be so much better when you're on a monitor or on a PC. Because you're already getting the improvement of the monitor where you don't have to look as far. And just having all the advantages of a PC, you're going to be a demon.
I just started looking at the mini map. I just switched to PC, and it is a game changer. It is a game changer having a monitor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think one of the things too with and I started off my journey in Call of Duty. It was for the 16 years I've been playing. 2007 to now, 16 years I've been playing Call of Duty. I played 14 or whatever of them, 15 or whatever, or 13 whatever of them on console and a big screen TV. And if you're sitting too close to that thing, Sub is 100% correct. You're not looking at the corners. Like, you just can't, because your head has to turn. If your head has to turn, it ain't happening during a fight.
If you're
There's no
standing
way.
too far back, you can't see your enemy.
You can't see it anyway.
So, yeah.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So you're kind of screwed. That's why, the computer monitor setup situation or console and desk monitor setup is just superior for that reason alone, because you don't have to turn your head. It's just a quick eye glance, boom, 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 done.
And if you have a desk, might as well use mouse and keyboard.
Well, we don't all have typewriters at home, so I laugh. But here's the thing. I grew up playing mouse and key, right? So I grew up playing Doom and all of that stuff. There were no controllers. You couldn't have a controller on a PC. It didn't compute, right? And GoldenEye controller format was awful. The N65. You go back and play with the N64 controller these days, it'll be like, I never want to play controller again if that's the experience.
Yep.
But so I grew up playing mouse and key, and I can do it both. And I played Cold War in Warzone on mouse and key. My KD was actually higher in Cold War than it was in Warzone 1 on controller. And I think it's such a different experience when you have complete control over what you do than on controller. And we touched on this a while back, a little bit ago in the episode. But one of the things that I have the hardest time letting go of is the control over my aim, right? Like, I'm always trying to aim at the character, which fights aim assist. And on mouse and key, I didn't have that, right? Like, I just aimed at the player and I shot them and they died. And so I think one of the things that when we talk about mouse and key versus controller is like, how many people who play controller don't know how to play it right because they intuitively want the control over what their character does. They don't let the aim assist do its thing. I think that's one of the biggest problems people have when they compare mouse and keyboard versus controller. I see this all the time. Aim assist doesn't do that for me, and I've spent a lot of time messing around with aim assist just in private, just to understand what it does. And the biggest thing with aim assist is not to do anything, which in a lot of ways is important, right? And I think with mouse and key, you need that complete control. And I think a lot of people that play controller should play mouse and key because it's better suited to how their brain functions, right? I don't know, Lipe, if you go back and forth, if you spent any time on controller.
So I started Warzone on controller because I was playing on my PlayStation, and I've always I played Counter-Strike back in the day. I was in a clan. Like, I knew how to play mouse and keyboard. When I decided to dust off my old PC and get on Warzone on PC, it was rough. Like, the first couple of days, I was like, why does this feel so foreign to me? But now if I go back to controller, like, I've tried a couple of times because I've heard how, like, you just need to let the aim assist do its thing. And within, like, a couple matches, I'm like, nope, going back, can't do this. I just need to have my arm and hand go over to the player's head and click the mouse. I
Whole
can't.
body.
I'll use anything I've got over letting my controller do it for me, Jay.
Touche.
You know, I tried to learn mouse and key for a little while, and I don't have the space here. I'm in what is the equivalent of a half bathroom with my PC here and my monitor here, so I can't do that. That is a skill that I do want to acquire at some point. But I tried to play Warzone on mouse and key, and what I actually struggled with the most was the looting and the up-close fighting. I felt like I was losing gunfights that I normally wouldn't lose. And so one night I lost my patience, and I'm like, screw this. And I went back to my controller. I shit you not, the very first game on my controller, I dropped my PR, which was my PR at the time. So, and the other thing, too, if you really think about it, like the good players, and that's why, Sub, we talked about this, I think probably in episode 2 or 3. Remember that video that was going around and the guy was like, see, look at this. You see the guy just zoom, and then the aim assist just locking on the guy. Mm-hmm. And he's trying to complain about aim assist. And I'm like, okay, first of all, that's a top 250 player who knows how to use aim assist. You can't use that as an argument against aim assist. Those dudes know how to use it. They legitimately do. And that's part of what makes them good. So I feel like Jay kind of hit on that a little bit earlier. The lesser skilled players and you did too, we don't know how to use aim assist as well as the higher skilled players do. So then you factor in all the movement and everything else, and that's where people get bodied.
Yeah.
I don't get why the CDL doesn't make their players play mouse and key. Leave the aim assist for the people who don't know how to.
Because mouse and key doesn't write sponsorships.
That's true.
It certainly can.
Sponsored by AIM controllers.
Logitech. What else? What else we got? I got too much Logitech stuff.
I got a Logitech
plenty of companies.
Also.
Yeah.
So.
No. I think it's one of those things. I think when you get down to it at the pro level, I'd be interested. We get top 250. We get some talented guys through this stream, off and on. And, I think I got to put that on the docket of questions to ask them. What is to you, controller over mouse and key? Why would you pick one or the other at a competitive level? Assuming that everybody played the same, right? Assuming that everybody was on the same setup, right? It wasn't some on controller, some on mouse and key. Why one over the other? I think that's a great question. I would love to actually pick some top 250s, pick some competitive players and ask them that and hear their brain work through why they prefer one over the other. I think that's a great point.
I think here's what I hear from a lot of people when especially if Jay is dead waiting for me to buy him back and he's talking mouse and key guys like it's a hack I'm using or something just because the movement looks different. And a lot of people see mouse and key and they're like, oh, it's basically cheating. You're on PC, you're cheating, all that stuff. Mm-hmm. But I think it's because a lot of them. I think a lot of people who are on mouse and key are people who have been doing this for a little while, so they tend to have a little bit more skill. But I think they live in the middle, where controller players are there's a lot of casuals who are not very good, and then they assume that the mouse and keyboard players are the ones that are have a huge advantage. But at the actual top, if you look at all the Warzone pros, they're not playing mouse and keyboard except for one or two.
Yeah.
Huskers is the only one I can think of that is, and
Breadman is very good.
Is Breadman on mouse and key too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Metaphor is very, very good. There's a
handful.
The ceiling for controller is higher than mouse and key, and I think it's going to stay that way for this new iteration. But like I said before, I think this game makes it competitive in the middle, which is what's important to me, at least.
But what you just said to me, and I'll be upfront with all of you about this. I believe that it takes a lot more skill to be a good mouse and key player, even with all the advantages, because it is a very high skilled input to use. A little bit more so than controller. My thing is I just always felt like there were several advantages that mouse and key players had over controllers, specifically with input speed, meaning from the time I press the button to the time it happens, those kind of things, and then the flick, and then the recoil and things like that. But let's not mistake this. Mouse and key is very freaking hard, and not everybody can do it.
Well, I'll tell you my experience on mouse and keyboard Warzone 1. For some reason, I don't remember exactly how this happened, but I dropped into a match solo without my controller. And I was like, what's going on here? So I tried my mouse to see what was going on, and sure enough, my guy moved. So, and I happened to see an enemy in the distance. And I had picked up just a ground loot AR. I'm pretty sure it was AR, not an LMG. And I literally just said, I bet I pushed the main mouse button to shoot, and I did that. And I beamed that guy from well over 100 meters. I'd never done it in Warzone before. And then shortly I turned around. I was like, wow, that was pretty easy. And I turned around, and I was trying to loot in the building, and a guy ran up on me, and I couldn't do anything close range at all. Like, I got ruined. I couldn't figure out how to loot, first of all. And second of all, he ran circles around me. I couldn't even shoot him. I couldn't. I was like this. It was horrible.
I know what the screen looks like when you're panicked on mouse and key.
It's pretty embarrassing.
Where did he go?
It was 100% different situation. So long range, it felt to me like mouse and keyboard was OP compared to controller. Close up, everything less than medium range, I thought I am never going to be able to do. I think it's way too high skill for a guy my age who's been playing controller since before the Nintendo Entertainment System. It's that long I've been on controller. And a brain like that, older and doing the same thing for video games for all those years, it would take a lot for me to switch. People are like, hey, just try mouse and keyboard. It's not just try mouse and keyboard for me. It would be a monumental effort for me.
It's time. It's time, right, Jay? Like being able to devote the time to being able to learn this. It's not like you said. It's not like you just pick it up and then, you learned it. Like,
no.
My guy Just Reloaded, he did this on stream, no less. He's a Twitch partner. He did this on stream. He went from controller and then just all of a sudden just straight up dropped it and went mouse and key. And he seemed to pick it up pretty quick to me, but if you ask him, it was a shit show at first. But, dude, yeah, it took him a long time to feel like he was really comfortable with it. So I agree with you, Jay. It's a time thing, man, for sure.
You're making me feel real good right now because I plan on dropping controller here after Warzone starts.
Mm-hmm.
I'll still play Warzone on controller, but I'm going to play multiplayer and get good on keyboard and mouse.
Okay.
I give him 3 matches. Based on one thing only. Based on the fact that last night his controller was bugging out, and he was on mouse and key, and like he could have like
I got a kill.
You could have asked me like, what button does this? But you were like, I'm done. And I was like, just back us out. It's okay. Turn on your controller. Don't back out.
I did not know what the keybinds were.
Yeah.
So your controller bugged out. So I would suggest using discount code sub1KD at 8.
Just sub 1.
It's
Just
the charging
one.
cable right now.
So, I think it's one of those things that when you look at, and J-Rock perfectly summed up my experience, and I think watching pros are like high-level players stream through Warzone 1 and then into Warzone 2 on mouse and key and controller. I think Jay really laid out what I've found to be the truth and what I think is the reality with mouse and key versus controller, at least in Warzone, is that the advantage depends on your situation, right? Like there's advantages and disadvantages to both inputs. Controller, it dominates in sniping, it dominates in longer range engagements like that medium to long range fight where accuracy matters versus closer range fights where it's more movement focused, right? Like in the current rendition of the game, movement is really important, and the game is really sped up and moved closer together than it used to be. Like if you look at old clips of Warzone 1, you always see people taking fights at like 25, 30 meters. So it's like an optimal engagement fight versus, the Caldera era with, some of those SMGs that you had and especially during the tape gripped meta where, the engagement fight was, close enough you could pick their nose with their barrel if you wanted to. And, in that scenario with rotational aim assist, I think the controller obviously has a huge advantage as Jay discovered, right? Like the ability to let the machine hang on to your target more so than you can with mouse and key. You have less room for error. You have less room for losing that tracking or adjusting to changes in your opponent's movements. So I think when the game is properly balanced, it actually gives both inputs a place to shine, which I think is one of those things that the Car 98 was a unique era in Warzone, because it allowed mouse and key to have a specific advantage at most ranges. Even as movement picked up, right? You just have to be able to snap to and hit your shot once, and that's something that mouse and key really, in my opinion, is that's their bread and butter, right? Like that quick scope, that rotation, that quick hit, and something that I think you don't see as much with controller, where it's more difficult. It's more it's a lot more difficult to be precise in controller. There's some players that can be very good at 2020. Caps Lock on Twitter, I think Twitter and Twitch, I think is a fantastic player. He's good at 2020. He looks like a mouse and keyboard player, but most control.
Or 2020
sensitivity.
Sensitivity.
I'm kidding. I'm dork.
You're killing me. Like, you should know this. You're not that casual. But I think that when you get into the nitty-gritty of what makes mouse and key relevant, the input latency is its own thing, but I think the biggest part is having a place for that to excel within the meta. And I think that's something that Warzone 1 kind of failed at after they nerfed the sniping, right? They kind of got rid of the Car 98, and Warzone 2 got rid of it completely, right? There was no...
Now it's called a longbow.
I'm curious to see how this shakes out in Warzone 2. So, but I think if the game is properly balanced, you're going to have areas in which the mouse and key players can excel at that is different than what the controller players excel at. I think where you have the problem is when you have everyone tries to play exactly the same, and they expect everyone to play, the same kind of style regardless of your input, because it's all or nothing. I think that's where Warzone 3, Warzone 2 Redux, whatever we're calling
What are we calling it?
Warzone 2 minus 1.
Whatever we're calling
Warzone 2 Part 2.
Well, and that's a perfect segue there, Sub, into the next topic.
I teed you up for it.
Yeah, I know. I appreciate that. Jay, I'm going to finish with you, but I want to know from the three of you, we'll start with D-Parts, what are you looking forward to? What are your expectations for the Modern Warfare 3 era of Warzone? So we've talked about Modern Warfare 3. Let's talk about the upcoming Warzone. What are you hoping for? What do you think, man?
Just it to get better than it has been. I want to see everybody playing. The cheaters got to go. We have to get some sort of anti-cheat. You know what? Yeah.
Everybody but cheaters.
Everybody but cheaters.
And Riot Shield users and noob tubers and no.
I don't know about those guys, but we have to get an anti-cheat. You can't play the game if it's overwhelmed with cheaters, and cheaters make nobody happy but themselves. The movement guys.
They're not happy. I promise you, they're not happy.
Everybody has their opinions, but everybody's opinion agrees with the cheaters have to go.
Yeah,
that's fact. Lipe?
I'm looking forward to hopefully a game that, as Sub 1 was saying, there's a balance. Like you can, with Apex, where most pro teams have at least one controller and one mouse and keyboard player for different skills that they can excel at. I think if Warzone can pull something off like that, where there's a benefit to having both sides on a team, I think that would be great. I'm looking forward to hopefully them finding a good way to do a map rotation, because I'd love to see some of these older maps come back. I'm not especially for the big map. I think it can get really old to have the same map throughout the year, especially this past year where they didn't really change much about the map. I think that there's room for Verdansk to come back, even if it's a limited time thing. I think it'd be fun. But I think they just have so many maps now. They can make better use of them. It's exciting to see. You can already play the new map. I haven't explored it enough, and right now I think it kind of looks a little bit too gray and dull. But that's probably because it's in the zombies mode.
Right.
But I'm looking forward to just getting new content. I've never not enjoyed a map. I enjoyed Caldera. I understand the complaints, but I enjoyed it all. every Resurgence map. It's been fun. So I just am excited for new content. Hopefully, some of my friends who left the game will come back. But I got new friends that are still here. So
yes, you do, Lipe.
I need you to carry me a little bit more, bro.
Let's get in there.
Jay,
I want to see players of all skill levels having a blast in the new Warzone. Whatever that takes, that's what I want to see. I also want to see as many of those players as possible having the longevity that I don't think they've had since like early Warzone 1, that first year with Verdansk. Everybody was having a blast till the cheaters came in and there was a problem and all that. And then movement started to increase, and there was, like my friends had issues with keeping up with all that stuff. I want to see, and I think we are going to be in a good place with the changes that Modern Warfare 3 is going to bring to the next Warzone. I think we're going to be in a good place to provide as much longevity as we can, at this point in time. So I want to see the widest variety of players, from the lowest skill people to the highest skill, all having a blast in the new Warzone. And I want to have enough content changes, content additions. I want to have enough stuff happening in the game, fun things that keeps everybody interested for as long as possible. I know that's a big answer, and it's broad and general and everything, but that's overall, that to me will make Warzone, the new version, as successful as it can be. It just needs to be the best experience for the widest range of people.
That's perfectly said. I think there at the end, the best experience for the widest range of people. And that kind of goes back to a little bit about what you were talking about with Lucky about, and I watched that stream. Nicely done, sir.
Thank you.
Just being able to have a game that is balanced and doesn't swing one way or the other, because as we've discussed a couple times already today, Warzone 1 favored the Sweats. This last one favored people that
the other side.
Yeah, that were not. And it just went too far. And it does feel like, from what I've heard of people that have actually played this, this one is going to be a more polished version of the first Warzone. And that, to me, is very exciting. I'm excited about the fact that everything's on the same engine. So now we won't have busted-ass metas like with the Cold War integration, because that damn near broke Warzone. And then you have the Vanguard integration. Everything's on the same engine, so things are easy fixes, which is why they left the Modern Warfare 2 guns in. And like I said on Twitter the other day, if you're still using Modern Warfare 2 guns, I hope you snag your junk in a zipper. We're out here trying to rank up stuff, and you're out here pulling some bullshit. F you. But anyway, that's just my thoughts. Sub, what you got, man?
Well, I think I'm looking forward to, a balanced game, right? Like, I think we can get to a point in Warzone where it feels more like the original Verdansk, where there's something for everybody, right? Your little Timmy in the corner, who doesn't feel comfortable pushing the team, they can have a way, there's enough game for them to play. And then the people that want to dance around them, have those opportunities to do so. And it doesn't create a sense where it's just impossible to play one way or the other. I think that is going to be the biggest benefit to it. And having, the map, as T Parks pointed out, the zombies map makes it seem like, it feels like Verdansk. It feels like they took the best parts of Verdansk and the best parts of Al Mazrah, and they mushed them together so far, and they put a map, with a nice skybox in, make it brighter, have no fog. I think the game is going to play really well. So I'm not worried about the map this time around. I think it's just going to be the combination of the attitude and what they do with the metas to kind of give the game, a good feel one way or the other. So, I have a lot of optimism going forward that, I think is warranted. So, but yeah, I want to work us towards closing. We're kind of reaching the end of our time, but I want to ask everybody, this is, real quick. I want to know favorite primary gun through all of Warzone, favorite secondary, and what gun do you never want to see again? D Parks?
Ooh, favorite primary. You put me on the spot here. Probably. I don't know. I liked I like them all. I'm an SMG guy, so I'm trying to think. I run a lot of double SMG. I like the ISO 10. I like the MAC 10. Probably was my favorite go-to gun. Sniper, Car 98, AR. I don't know.
You got to come up. You got to come up with.
What about the Grau?
Maybe not primary. What's your number one? What's your number one?
The AK-74 or the AK-70. The AK. Sorry.
The Cold War AK?
No.
Or the Modern Warfare?
Modern Warfare. I like the original Modern Warfare.
Great answer.
All right.
What is a gun you never want to see again?
DMR.
Okay.
Fair. Good one. J-Rock?
For my favorite main, which for me would be an AR, it's either, well, actually, I have, it's almost a 3-way tie, but I will give you a favorite. It's between the Kilo, well, let's see. Yeah, I guess it's the Kilo, the AMAX, and then there is an LMG that I had a blast with, which was the PKM. But
which one are you taking to bed? Which one are you taking to prom with you?
Yeah, so I got my first solo win with that AMAX, but the Kilo, I had that one. I could control that one very, very well at long distances. So that's that one. And then for SMG, it's the MP5 old school.
Okay.
All the back to Verdansk. Yep. And then the gun I never want to see again is the Car 98.
Wow, dude.
J007. What gun do you want to? What gun are you taking home tonight?
Oh, I'm with Jay on this. Actually, on his 2 ARs, I loved both the. Well, for Warzone 1, it would be the Kilo and then the AMAX. If I'm going Warzone 2, I'm taking the Cast-Off 7.62. I have rocked that gun.
Take all three home though.
From the beginning. SMG MP5, I loved the K-Swiss. That was my favorite sniper. The gun I don't ever want to see again is that MF and RPK.
Lipe.
I mean, if you're going both Warzone 1 and 2, I would have to say my favorite gun was the Grau. But maybe that's just nostalgia because I missed that Verdansk time.
That's okay. Nostalgia's good. The Grau was pretty good.
The MAC 10 was the first time that I was like, I don't care how many people are in that room, I'm running in. I just felt like a god with that gun. So that would be my secondary for the Grau. Gun I never want to see again. I feel like I don't know. I probably don't want to, even though I used it because I was like, I got killed by it so many times recently that I was like, you know what, I'm busting this out. But the one-shot shotguns, like, get them out.
Oh, I had so much fun with that.
Yeah, get him out of here.
I had a blast. I have so many highlights from that time, but it's like, it doesn't belong in this.
It belongs for a short time. Give us
You
a
can
little
fight
time.
a shotgun from a distance, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, if I had to take one gun home, I want the Modern Warfare M4. Like, I like that gun. The fact that I didn't know how to build that gun is irrelevant. I like that gun. That was a fun one. SMG, I like the MAC 10. Like, my favorite.
Oh, yeah.
The first time I saw somebody use that with a shield, I was like in awe. I was like, well, there's a fucking Ninja Turtle on this map.
This has been Sub 1 Kitty, along with J007 TV and the Slightly Above Average Gaming Podcast. We're logging off now, so we'll see you next time.